When you're asked in an interview, walk us through your resume, what are you supposed to focus on? How much time should you spend on all of your jobs? And if you've been working for 10 or 15 or 20 years, that's a lot of information. So I want to show you exactly how to do it. This is going to be a longer video, but I want you to see exactly how I would walk someone through my resume. And I have it here. It's 2 pages. So here it goes. At the very beginning, you always want to start with the first job on your resume and walk them through to present day. As you can see on my resume, I went to the University of Pennsylvania for psychology, and I had 2 internships in behavioral health. I enjoyed my time in those clinics, but I had a realization when I had my internships that I didn't really feel as though that industry was for me, and I was really drawn to corporate HR. I thought it would be a perfect intersection of my undergrad in psychology and my interest in helping people feel better at work. My first role in HR was as an HR generalist, and I have to say I was pretty bad at it. I have a knack for people, but being an HR generalist is a lot of paperwork, and you're doing employee changes, and all of these things have to be done correctly, and I was really, really bad at it. And luckily, a couple months into my position, the corporate recruiter was very overwhelmed and came over to my desk with a stack of resumes and asked me to help her call some prospective candidates. And I thought to myself, they're gonna pay me to talk to people on the phone? Yeah, sure. And I immediately realized that recruiting was just this perfect intersection for me, and I loved it. And it really was love at first sight. So, my boss recognized it as well, realized very quickly that I was much better as a recruiter than an HR generalist. And I was quickly promoted from that position to a corporate recruiting position, where I was conducting pre-employment assessments, doing all of the pre-screen phone calls, and preparing all of the employment applications for hiring managers. I was very much an entry-level corporate recruiter, really learning the craft. And I realized if I really loved it, I wanted to really learn how to recruit. And that's when in 2006, I became a recruiter at Apex Financial. Now, Apex was a contingent recruiting firm that was started by 2 ex-accountants that had been burnt out by the Big Four world, and they started their own recruiting firm. And I loved it. It was baptism by fire. It was 100% commission. And I learned so much of what companies wanted from candidates. I learned how companies recruited. And then on the other side of it, I learned how to cold call. I learned how to recruit. I learned how to hustle. And I learned what people were doing right and wrong in interviews. And right around the time I started to long for being back in-house and being an internal recruiter, I got recruited by Commerce Insurance Services, which was it was part of Commerce Bank, which is a large bank, but it was the insurance brokerage that was inside of the bank. And I found out very quickly that they were about to divest from this large company and become a smaller organization. And that really appealed to me because I want to be a big fish in a small pond, and I wanted to be able to work at a company where I could build relationships with all of the executives. I was never really drawn to working for a global company. So quickly it became this really fun, fast-paced entrepreneurial environment. It was January 2008. We divested from the bank. We had to create a new name, a new identity. I remember recruiting at colleges and universities, and we didn't even have a name yet. It was really fun. We were becoming something new. And that also allowed me to create all of the ways that we were going to recruit our candidates. We didn't have a talk track. We didn't know what our value proposition was. And in that time of becoming an organization, we were also solidifying how we were going to recruit. We created processes. I formalized the interview letters, the offer letters, our employee handbook. I worked directly with the marketing department. And I also did some other HR projects like formalizing all of the job descriptions. And then I was recruited to recruiting manager in May 2010, and I was tasked with creating and managing an intern program, which I'm proud to say that they're still running to this day. And I partnered with the C-suite on all of our recruiting strategies. And then I was promoted again in July 2009, as you can see on my resume, to Director of Talent Acquisition. I managed one person in that role, and I was still working with the intern programs and partnering with the C-suite on all of our recruiting needs. And I'm proud to say that by the time I left that organization, I had hired over 80% of the employees. It was a wonderful job. I learned so much. But I started to realize that I wanted to do something a little different, and unfortunately, it wasn't something that I could do there. I had this come to Jesus moment. I really wanted to teach people how to interview better. I wanted to do it for both job seekers and hiring managers, because as a recruiter, I had been on the other side of the table, and to be honest with you, I had a little bit of judgment fatigue. I was sick and tired of sitting in interviews thinking to myself, geez, if you just said this, you'd get the job, or I wish your resume looked better. I wanted to be the person teaching people how to do this. So I left that organization in April 2011 to start my own consulting business. And right away, I was called by the dean of the Fox School of Business at Temple University, because I had hired all of our interns at Connor Strong from his program. And he said, hey, I heard you're starting your own consulting business to teach people how to interview. Can you come and teach our students? Because you've recruited here for years. You know what they're doing right and wrong. Help us out. And I didn't really envision myself being a teacher. I started my own business to be a coach, but it's really kind of the same thing. So I've spent the last 12 years teaching at the Fox School of Business, and that really became such a wonderful opportunity for me, because I collected lots of research. I discovered interview styles. I wrote a book on interview styles that's going to be published by HarperCollins in January 2024. And I created a real meaningful platform to empower people, to teach people how to advocate for themselves in the interview process. Now, that's present day. That's how I would do it. How would you do it? I hope that helps. Follow me for more tips on how to interview better. Get a Shift profile to discover your interview style, and get workbook sections on how to improve your interview answers. When you're asked in an interview, so why were you fired from your most recent position? Don't panic. Having been fired or laid off doesn't mean that they're not going to hire you. Many people get jobs after being fired or laid off. This is how you're going to answer this interview question.